to Extraordinary Women. I'm your host, Shannon Skinner, and we're here on thatchannel.com. And I'm joined in the second half of our show with Lesley Crewe, who is Canada's queen of chick lit. She's the author of 5 novels. She's here to talk about her new novel, Her Mother's Daughter. Stay tuned, because later in the end of this segment, I will have my Good to Know Minute, where I ask my guests for their top tip on creating a successful life, and you're going to hear from Lesley. Stay tuned. Lesley, welcome to the show, and welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming into the studio.
Great. It's wonderful to be here.
You're on a book tour?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's lots of fun. I always come to Toronto every year.
Every year, and you have you've got some readings at some libraries.
Yes, I had one last night, and I have one this afternoon, so that's always a lot of fun.
Great. Well, fantastic. Now, you are one of few Canadian authors who are consistently writing and churning out books that are high caliber, considered chick lit, the genre chick lit. And I understand that really that whole genre was inspired by Jane Austen and her first, well, not her first book, but her book, Emma. How does it feel to be considered an author, Canada's reigning queen of chick lit?
Well, gee, if I'm in the company of Jane Austen, I guess that's pretty good.
I'd say.
It's wonderful. I mean, I didn't. These books are very popular, and I'm very, very lucky that I seem to be writing the kind of books that a lot of people would like to read. In today's fast-paced world, my books are easy. You read them in 2 days. Everybody says they can't put them down. And so that's sort of fun. I mean, there's nothing to complain about.
Well, how would you best describe, then, what you write?
Well, I write about family, I write about friends, and I write about community. Now, most of my books take place in the Maritimes because, of course, that's where I live. I live in Cape Breton. I'm connected to that world. I'm connected to that place. And I think that's why they've done so well in the Maritimes. And that's why but I get mail from all across Canada and even in the States and even a few in Europe too. I mean, people do know about it, but I think we're just kind of trying to get it out there that, yeah, these books are really successful, and it's just been a blast for the last 5 years, 5 books.
My understanding with the genre chick lit and how it differs from a romance novel genre is that it is about women who take care of themselves.
Well, exactly. Romance is mostly about the romance. Chick lit is about the woman, but how she takes care of herself, her friends, and her family. There doesn't have to be a romance element in the book at all. But I mean, it's always nice if there is. Everybody loves Bridget Jones's Diary, Sex and the City, shopaholic books. These are books that are hugely popular. Well, there has to be some reason why they're hugely popular. They're connecting with women on some level. We see ourselves in these books. And I think it's great that so many women like to read it, and they really shouldn't be, everybody tries to sort of put you in a genre. They've tried to say, I just say I write women's fiction because I'm a woman, I'm writing fiction. It's simple. So.
What inspired you? Now, you have been a writer for a number of years. What inspired you to begin writing novels?
I really don't know. I mean, I did have a column in the Cape Breton magazine for 5 years, and I was doing feature articles for them. But I just decided when it was a winter day, and I thought, gee, I think I'll sit down and write a story. And that was it. 2 months later, I stood up, and the first novel was done. And then shortly thereafter, I started the second one. All 5 of my novels were written in a 2-year period that was like crazy.
That's incrable.
I know, it was nuts.
In 2 years.
Yeah, it was a little nuts, but
did you sleep?
No, of course not. It really was like 12 and 18-hour days for 2 months, and it played havoc with my life, and my children sort of didn't know. Well, my children were older by then, but I did. My 17-year-old daughter said, you don't do mummy things anymore. So then I knew, wow, this is really bad. But I was in the zone. I would get up and I'd make everybody breakfast. But then once I started, I was shocked when somebody would tap me on the shoulder and say, what's for supper? I honestly don't know where the day went. So that's what I love. That's the best part of writing a novel, is when you're in that space. All the rest of it kind of doesn't matter. That's the best part about writing.
Now, as you were starting your first novel, which the name of your first novel is?
Relative Happiness.
Right, Relative Happiness. When you were starting to write this, was there a voice that was speaking to you? Was it a character that was speaking to you?
Yes, I think so. I mean, the Relative Happiness is pretty much, it's not an autobiography by any means, but a lot of the things that happen in that book happened to me, or I experienced. And I just put a fictional story to it. Everybody who knows me and reads the book can only hear my voice in their heads when they're reading it. So that book I wrote just for me. I never thought these books would be published. I never wrote them to be published. I wrote them for myself. And it was just sort of a happy coincidence that somebody thought that maybe somebody else would like to read these stories. So I still just write for myself. I don't consider an audience when I'm writing.
And what do you think is the benefit?
Well, the benefit is that you get to write what you want to do. I mean, you have to be connected with what you're writing about, or you wouldn't be able to write. If I didn't live in Cape Breton, I doubt I would be writing. I know that sounds strange, but that's my safe place. That's where I feel most comfortable. That's where my family is. When I go out for a walk in the morning and I see eagles and I see trees and I see water, that's where I make up my stories, and that's where I make up my dialogue. And then I go in the house and I go in my study, and that's when I start. I mean, I was born and raised in Montreal. I was brought up in a big city. But I don't know if I'd be able to write if I was in the city. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've lived in Cape Breton now for 30 years. So even to come to Toronto, it's always really exciting. And it's sort of, I love my time here, but I need to go back to that place to write.
What do you think is it about Cape Breton that...
it's just, you can't even describe this place. I mean, it's all about, and everybody who's born there wants to return there. I mean, most of us have to leave to get jobs. My own children live in Halifax. I mean, there's not that many places for youngsters to go, but they all want to come home. It's just the landscape, and it's the people and the family and the connection. Everybody knows who you are, or, the first thing, what's your father's name? Of course, that's, sort of an iconic phrase. You just feel connected to this place, and whether it's the sea and the wind and the wildlife and the sense of community. When you live in a small town, everybody knows your business. And that's kind of, I mean, that can be a drag. But
pros and cons to everything.
I know, but I mean, it just feels safe. It's where people know you, and they know your children, and they ask how they are, and I like living in a place like that. And all my books are filled with those. And Cape Breton characters, let's face it. I mean, the whole place is full of characters. I only have to go to the grocery store to think, oh, I'm going to write a book about that guy.
Can they identify themselves in your books?
Yeah, so they all think they're in my books. And all my characters' names, I use the names that are around my head. They're not, I don't, people say, I'm sure that was me in that. I said, no, but just a sort of a puzzle of names that are running around in my head. They need to be Cape Breton names. And just, I don't know.
And you change the characters.
Oh, yeah, you have to change the character. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Geez, I can't write about my neighborhood until everybody's dead. So it's a lot of fun. And I think that's what people love. They love reading about their own place in the world. I mean, that's why I'm so popular in the Maritimes. I'm writing about the Maritimes, but the families are universal. We all have the same things. We all are looking after elderly parents, or we all have kids that are driving us crazy, or or husbands that are driving us crazy. But it's always either the friends, somebody in our lives saves us at some point. And people recognize that. They like to read that so they don't think that they're alone. That's why I think they're popular.
And so you didn't actually set out to write 5 books in 2 years. It just happened. That's
the way it happened. Like I say, I'm an all or nothing kind of gal. If I drink wine, I drink the whole bottle. I don't drink a glass. So it's just this poured out of me. I mean, I only started when I was 50. So I have nothing to lose. Like I say, I wasn't doing this for a career. I wasn't doing this for any reason other than I'm a storyteller. And I like to write stories. And actually, the first time somebody called not that long ago, and my husband answered, and he said, "Is this where the storyteller lives?" I thought that was
I love
so cool. Like, yeah, so did I. I thought it was neat.
Well, it's almost time for a break, and this is where we have our regular Good to Know Minute, where I invite my guests to provide their top tip on creating success, and I know you have one that you can share with our audience.
I do. Oh, you want me to do it
Yes.
now? Oh, yes. Well, okay. The top tip is to love someone or something. And to love someone or something, and to stop worrying. And that is a big one, because I'm a big worrywart. So I try to take my own advice.
To love someone, to love something, and to stop worrying. Well, sounds like good advice to me. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back to Extraordinary Women on thatchannel.com. I'm your host, Shannon Skinner, and we're talking here with Lesley Crewe, who has a new book called Her Mother's Daughter. Wow, I know this is a fantastic book. Tell us about it.
Well, this book came about because I was raised in Montreal, born and raised in Montreal, and I have lived in Cape Breton now for 30 years. So I am a little divided. I've been a city girl, I've been a country girl. So I wanted to see what it was like if two daughters brought up in a small town. When the book opens, their mother has died. One of them stayed at home and raised her daughter, and the other one went away as soon as she could. She's sophisticated. They're complete opposites of each other. And I wanted to see what it would be like if the sophisticated sister came back on the scene, and what kind of havoc she would create with this country sister, if you know what I mean. They haven't seen each other in years, and Bay and Tansy are their name, and Tansy didn't come back for her mother's funeral. When you live in a small town, that doesn't go over very well. So the whole town has their own, they have judged her, and they've judged her all their lives. And so you meet Bay first, and then you meet Tansy and the people that they live with, their friends, and then what happens when the two of them and their two sort of worlds collide. It's really exciting, and it's very good.
And of course, secrets play a big role.
Yes. Well, I mean,
secrets.
Our life is, full of them, whether people know them or they don't. So I think that's what I wanted to explore, just what it is when a whole village thinks you're one thing, and you're not.
Surprise!
No, so it's just, and this book is very dear to me because I dedicated it to my own daughter. Even though she tells me my book Ava Comes Home is her favorite, I said, well, this one better be the second favorite. Actually, she does. She does love this one too. So that's always nice. And
for anyone interested in buying your book, where is it available?
All across Canada, Chapters, Coles, independent bookstores. You can order it online. LesleyCrewe.com. They'll give the links to Amazon, and Chapters are on there. But frequent your local bookstore, because that's important as well.
Now, you have built quite a substantial fan base.
Yes, I know, I have. It's just such a surprise.
Not just Canada, but all over.
Yes, all over. I hear all the time, I hear from people in the States saying, where can I find your books?
So what do you think it is about your books or your stories, your novels or your stories that is inspiring women and drawing them to you?
Well, I think they recognize themselves in my books. These are just about ordinary women. And the stories I tell are ordinary stories. It's not some fabulous thing. They're not climbing Mount Everest. They're just, how do you deal with an ordinary teenager while, coping with elderly parents, while separated from a husband, while having, working and trying to have a life. These are what my books are about. These are the relationships that go on, and they see themselves and they think, oh, wow, like I'm not alone. And then the funny part of it is, that's the funny part. Actually, my book Hit and Misses, the 4 50-year-old girlfriends go off to New York for a weekend and everything goes wrong. Well, everybody just loves that because we've all done it. We've all gone with our girlfriends to a New York, weekend. And so they just relate to it. They can connect with it. So that's the nice part. It's nice to know.
And there's comedy and tragedy.
Oh
both
gosh,
in your
yes,
books.
yes, tons of comedy, and yes, and some serious subjects. But like I say, life isn't a flat line. You know, you're crying in the morning and smiling in the afternoon. So that goes well. A lot of people, I guess that's what I do really well, and people have commented on that.
When you are writing in your comedy in your stories, are you laughing aloud?
Yes, of course. I amuse myself. Like I say, I'm an audience of one. I'm writing these stories for me. And so if I find it funny, I can pretty well guarantee that, you know, well, most people, you know, you can't say everybody'd find it funny, but that's the thing that when people come back, they get my books. I was just at the launch in Sydney on a couple of Saturdays ago, and a woman bought the book, and she emailed me and said, I read half of it in the parking lot, and I figured I better go home. And she said, when's your next one? I said, I launched this one. So that's the kind of readership I have. They're waiting for my books. They want another one, like tomorrow.
And of course, because you've consistently churned them out quickly.
I know that. Well, one time I got an email from someone who said, could you write longer books more frequently? I said, I don't think so. I think I've done about as much as I could do, but I've always got, you know, something else in the works.
And what's next then?
Oh, I've got a really good one. It's sort of a funny, sort of a spoof. Think about a mother who's trying to organize her daughter's wedding, and she slips a disc and ends up flat on her back and has to depend on everyone else to do her things for her. And like I say, she's a control freak. So that's ripe for that. A lot of moms would enjoy that story, I think.
So, in terms of other women writers, I mean, we have you know, a lot of women watching this show. What advice would you have for them, for other female writers that are interested in embarking on a path like yours?
Right. I always tell all my students, everyone else, is that you always write as if no one is ever going to read it, because then you don't censor yourself. Then you don't have any expectations. Too often, young writers or any writers try to emulate writers they admire, but it might not be the way they, you know, like I couldn't write, you know, books like Margaret Atwood, and I know that, you know, you have to know what it is that you love to do. I'm happy doing what I do, but I was a new voice, and you know, Cape Breton, a lot of books in Cape Breton are all about either, you know, sometimes alcohol, going away. Mining, steel, hard times, you know, that's sort of the perception. But Cape Breton is filled with wonderful, loving characters and family and humor. We're like Newfoundlanders that way. And I've had more people come up to me and say, it's so nice to read a story that takes place in Cape Breton or wherever, in Halifax or whatever, and there's fun. We're a lot of fun. And so it's just nice to be able to do that. So yes, just write as if no one's ever going to read it, and that's your best bet to find out what kind of writing that you would like to do.
Now, why do you think that many other writers focus on sort of the melancholy in Cape Breton, the darker energy? Well,
let's face it. I mean, there is a dark energy. There is, you know, we do have had hard times, but that's the strength of our characters. You know. Cape Breton has been a hard place for a lot of people to live, and yet there's something about it because every one of us wants to get back there. I'm just glad that you know, obviously I see life through a bit of a humor kind of, and that's where that's what I like to concentrate on, because that's just me. I'm just glad I've been able to bring another point of view to what it's like to live on that island, and but it's universal. These, you know, these people. The people in here could be anywhere, but it's just nice that I put them where I feel most comfortable.
People in your new book or any of your books, it could be anywhere.
It could be on Vancouver. You know, anybody who lives near a lot, you know, fishing village. It's all the same. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be from Cape Breton to enjoy these books.
Is there another author that you aspire to write like?
No, I don't think so. I know of different, I've been described as Canada's Maeve Binchy. And if people like, because she writes, what does she write? She writes, if you want to call it chick lit or hen lit, because she's a lot older, she writes about the women that she grew up with in the British Isles. So, no, I think I'll just stick with what I'm doing, and I have a lot of, female writers that I admire, but I know I can't write like them. That's okay.
So what were your challenges when you began writing?
I really didn't have any because I had no expectations. I was just writing this for myself, and then I wrote another one, and then I wrote another one, and then somebody said, yes, we'd like to publish them, and that was it. There were no... Maybe that's why I was able to write as much as I did. I didn't have any expectations. I didn't think, oh my gosh, I'm going to write this novel and then try to sell it. I didn't think that at all. I just thought, I'm going to write a story, and now I'm going to write another one.
So is this actually it's your full-time job?
Well, I guess yes. When I